What worries me else is that we're going to have a zombie development market in this country. This is for many reasons. Okay? This is not something that's happening in Japan, for example. That will be a purely Irish malice. Okay? And the reasons are the following. Imagine you are an investor and you want to buy a site in Dublin, say, hey, where we are right now. Okay? You want to buy that building there. You want to redevelop it, you want to apply for permission, say 5 years from now. You have money. Okay? You think that it will yield a reasonable rate of return. But you are unsure whether next to it there is another building which is owned by NAMA. And if that building is owned by NAMA, you are unsure then whether that building will be redeveloped or not. And you are unsure whether that supply is going to hit the market at the same time as you're opening your new fancy brand office building or whatever you want to build. Would you invest? No, not unless you're given higher yield, risk-adjusted yield. Where that high yield is going to come from, go back to Ronald's presentation. It ain't happening anyways without risk adjustment. And if you mount on top of that the expectation of higher risk premium, I've done some exercises on my blog, you looking at double-digit required growth in the property market prices in this country on average for the next 20 years in order to break even with NAMA under a 30% haircut. Can anyone imagine? Well, we had the boom. We didn't have 20 years of double-digit average growth in the boom. How are we going to have that going out of the boom? I just don't understand. This is probably a good answer, by the way, for you as to why, that Brian posed it as a question, as to why the government has failed to produce a single estimate for NAMA that is actually gives us the scenarios. By the way, you hear about the goodies, the Bloxham, you hear about the Davies producing notes, research notes. Go back to them and read them. What these notes do, and the research that they perform, is all about equity valuation. There are no assumptions on interest rates. There are no assumptions about how costly the bonds financing will be to us. There are no assumptions about how costly it will be to run NAMA for us as the taxpayers. There are no assumptions as to whether there is proper alignment between incentives of the banks which simultaneously manage NAMA loan here and in the next door building managing their own loan. And they are facing the possibility of releasing both into the same market at the same time, competing one against each other. None of that is in those notes. So those notes cannot be seen as any attempt at proper analysis. It's a proper analysis from the point of view of the shareholder, but not from the point of view of us as the payers of NAMA. As of today, there is only one balance sheet, and that balance sheet is what myself and Brian have prepared. We showed it to international experts on the losses, potential losses. It estimates potential losses. It also does the exercise backwards, estimating what should be the haircuts on NAMA assets if we were to break even in 20 years' time. We showed that to international experts, CFA experts. We showed it to the domestic ones. The government itself has seen it. Department of Finance has been officially asked to issue an opinion on that particular balance sheet and came back saying that they cannot dispute a single number in it. And what that shows in the end is that when NAMA is all done and closed, the lowest expected losses to the taxpayer, net of all the receipts that the NAMA is supposed to collect, net of all sales of properties in the end, if things go dreamily, are between 18 and 40 billion on the taxpayers. We're going to lose this money no matter what under NAMA, even if the dreamy scenarios happen. If things go pear-shaped, you're looking at the multiples of that. This economy can't absorb that. We cannot absorb it. Households cannot absorb it. My family cannot be asked right now to shove out another $3,000 on an annual basis to the exchequer to pay for NAMA. We're going to go under. I'm going to mail my keys to my negative equity house in Dublin to the bank. And I'm going to leave the country. And this is where it leads us ultimately, NAMA leads us ultimately to. Years of stagnation economically, but also vast emigration out of this country. And emigration out of this country is not going to be the same as in the 1980s. By 1980s, emigration in this country was benign, even though the numbers were very high. But what was happening is that everyone was emigrating. What we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years is the selection bias-driven immigration. The best of the best, the most educated, the most marketable internationally people will pick up and leave. And the younger they are, the faster they're going to go out. We're seeing that right now. A year ago, I was speaking to a conference of the top graduates of the universities in Ireland. There was a group of about 200 students there who were graduating that year. And they were asked the question, very simple question, how many of them a year ago were planning to leave the country, to go seek their first employment outside of the country? I do it in every class that I teach, always. And I usually get maybe like 5, 6 people, you know, out of say 30, 40 students. Half. Half of the best students of this country were planning to leave the country then. If NAMA goes through, it will be 90%, and the remaining 10% will secure a job in the public sector, in civil service, in which case, of course, their productive addition to this economy is going to be nil or negative. And I'm not kidding you, okay? Sorry, don't take me wrong. If you look at the value added per hour employed, per hour worked, or per euro paid in wages, on the international database, KLEMS, European database, which does it for every country in Europe, and does it for Ireland, the rate of return is negative for the employment in every segment of the public sector, by any measure. The economy is going to start consuming itself just as the body which is deprived of food starts eating its own nutrients. We're going to start destroying ourselves on a cellular level. And this is what now leads to. Huh?
Within zombie cannibals.
We're going to be cannibals which are eating ourselves constantly to replenish ourselves. That's not sustainable for a very long period of time. What's more interesting from my point of view is also, you saw yesterday the Taxation Commission report. This is like, it's the government which has boxed itself into the corner before, and now it's boxing itself even deeper into the corner. I mean, we have on one hand a hopeful enterprise which bets on the increase in property values. We have on the other hand a system of taxation being introduced in this country which through property tax, self-assessed, is going to destroy any sort, any semblance of proper market in properties. Because now I will never sell my house. I might swap it with someone for an under-table payment, but I'm certainly not going to go and declare to my revenue commissioners that I have underpaid for a number of years my self-assessed tax. So if you think about it, the government is actually doing the opposite of what it's supposed to be doing with one hand, and then hoping with another hand that somehow the things will be resolved in the entire opposite direction. It's a contradiction on top of contradiction. Who is giving them advice is a rhetoric question. I can tell you that that person given the same advice in their previous employment in a Federal Reserve most likely would be politely told to go and take basic economics course again. That's an interesting thing.